When a widow in Madina takes in a homeless stranger on a rainy night, she has no idea he's hiding millions, and a scandal that could destroy her life. Like, comment, share and subscribe for more life-changing stories by Kwesi. The evening sky over Madina was an angry shade of grey, with heavy clouds rolling like restless giants. The first drops of rain fell against the zinc roofing of Akua's chop bar, tapping a hurried rhythm. Inside, the smell of fried plantain and spicy goat-light soup hung in the air. Akua, a 32-year-old widow with cocoa-brown skin and sharp, kind eyes, wiped down the last table while her 10-year-old son, Kobi, sat in the corner scribbling in his exercise book. Her life had been simple since Kojo, her husband, died in a trotro accident 3 years ago. She worked hard, smiled when she could, and kept her troubles private, because in this part of Accra, people loved stories that weren't theirs to tell. As she slid the last bench into place, she heard a faint cough from outside. The rain had grown heavier, pounding the street until the gutters overflowed. She stepped to the doorway and saw him. A man tall, but hunched, was sitting under the narrow eaves of her shop. His clothes were soaked and torn, his hair matted, and his face half hidden behind a rough beard. His skin looked tired, as if the sun and hardship had been chewing at it for months. Akua, close your door. Oh. Mama Isi, the plantain seller from across the road, shouted from her stall as she pulled down her tarpaulin. That man is dangerous. I hear he drinks and fights. You don't know where he came from. Akua hesitated. She looked at the man again. He wasn't begging, wasn't speaking, just sitting, shivering. Ma, who's that? Kobi whispered, coming to the doorway. Go inside, Kobi, Akua said softly, handing him the last tray of spoons. But her eyes stayed on the man. The rain intensified, blurring the streetlights into glowing yellow smears. Akua remembered the night after Kojo's death, how she had sat outside their tiny room in the rain, too numb to move, and how one stranger had pressed a hot meat pie into her hand without asking questions. She sighed, then stepped closer to the man. Mister, are you hungry? He looked up, and for a moment she caught something odd. His eyes were sharp, intelligent, not the dull gaze she expected. Just cold, he mumbled, his voice deep but hesitant. Ignoring Mama Isi's clucking tongue, Akua ducked back inside, scooped leftover jollof into a plate, added a piece of tilapia, and returned. She crouched beside him. Here. Eat before the rain washes you away. The man hesitated, then took the plate with a small nod. Thank you, madam. You can sleep at the back of the shop tonight, she said, glancing over her shoulder to be sure no one else was listening. It's not much, but it's dry. His eyes met hers again, and this time there was an intensity that made her heart beat faster, though she quickly brushed the feeling aside. My name is Kwesi, he said quietly. I'm Akua. Eat. We talk later, she replied, turning away before she could start asking the questions crowding her mind. In the shadows, with rain pounding on the roof, she didn't know she had just opened her life and her heart to the kind of trouble that could burn her whole world down. The rain didn't stop for 2 more days, and neither did Kwesi's presence. By the 3rd morning, he was no longer the shivering stranger on Akua's doorstep. He was helping her sweep the compound, repair wobbly benches, and carry bags of rice from the supplier. Akua had to admit he was useful. Kobi adored him, following him everywhere, laughing at his silly stories about fighting goats in the village and selling coconuts that could cure heartbreak. But even as Kwesi blended into her small world, little details began to itch at the edges of Akua's mind. For one, his chi was refined, crisp, and often dipped into Queen's English without warning. Pass me the ladle, if you please, he would say, as if they were in a hotel restaurant instead of a chop bar in dusty Madina. And his mannerisms, they were too polished. He knew how to swirl palm wine in a calabash as though testing its aroma, and when a customer joked about her husband bringing her French wine from Europe, Kwesi casually remarked, a Bordeaux, perhaps? Or a nice Côte du Rhône. Akua pretended to laugh along, but inside she thought, what homeless man knows French wine like that? Then there were his hands. She noticed it when he fixed a broken chair one afternoon. They weren't the calloused, cracked hands of a street dweller. His nails were neatly shaped, the skin smooth. These were hands that had known offices, not gutters. One late evening, when business was slow, Akua sent Kobe to bed and began scrubbing pots at the back of the shop. The rain had stopped, and the night was still until she heard it. A low voice, coming from the narrow alley behind the chop bar. She moved quietly, her bare feet silent against the cement. Kwesi was there, leaning against the wall, a small phone pressed to his ear, the kind of sleek, expensive smartphone that didn't match his tattered clothes. "I told you." "No, listen to me," he hissed in English. "The transfer has to go through tonight. I don't care what Mensa says. No, I won't return to the boardroom until my name is cleared." Akua's chest tightened. Boardroom? Transfers? Mensa? Kwesi paused, glancing toward the shop as if he sensed her there. She slipped back inside before he could see her. For the rest of the night, she worked in silence, pretending nothing had happened. But when Kwesi returned, his eyes lingered on her just a moment too long, as if wondering how much she'd heard. And Akua, for the first time, wondered if she'd invited a stranger, or a storm, into her life. Weeks rolled by, and Kwesi became more than just an extra pair of hands at the chop bar. He became part of Akua's daily rhythm. He walked Kobe to school when she was busy with morning customers, taught the boy how to fix a punctured bicycle tire, and once even bought him a brand new school bag, though he still claimed he had no money. "Where did you get the money for this?" Akua asked, suspicious but touched. "Ah, you think I can't save small from what I get here?" Kwesi grinned, but his eyes darted away quickly. Kobe hugged him in thanks, and Akua said nothing more. But something about his generosity didn't match his story. Despite her doubts, Akua couldn't deny the growing pull between them. He would tease her while they cooked, their hands brushing by accident over the ladle. Sometimes, when he laughed, she'd catch herself staring too long, wondering what he'd look like without the stubble and worn clothes. One Friday evening, after the Madina community's annual cultural night, they walked back together. The air was warm, and music from the event still drifted faintly through the streets. At the doorway to the chop bar, Kwesi paused. "You've done a lot for me, Akua," he said softly. "More than anyone in a long time." "You've helped me too," she replied, her voice lower than she intended. There was a beat of silence, the kind that pulls two people closer without them realizing. Then, before she could think, Kwesi leaned in. Their lips met, soft at first, then deepening. Akua's heart raced. For a moment, it felt like the rain had washed away all her loneliness. But the next morning, reality arrived in the form of gossip. Mama Isi told it first to the yam seller, who told it to the lotto kiosk man, who told it to the hair braider, until by midday, everyone knew. Some whispered that Kwesi was a wanted man hiding in Madina. Others claimed Akua was sleeping with him to get at his hidden fortune. Every time she stepped outside, she felt the stares. Then came the day that truly shattered her peace. It was a Tuesday afternoon when a sleek black Toyota Prado pulled up in front of the chop bar. The tinted window slid down, revealing a woman in her late 30s, wearing diamond earrings and a dress that screamed money. She stepped out, her heels clicking against the pavement. Without hesitation, she marched straight up to Kwesi. "Mr. Owusu," she barked. Akua froze. "Owusu?" Before Kwesi could speak, the woman's hand cracked across his face, loud enough to make Kobe drop the spoon he was holding inside. "You disappear for weeks and this is where you are," the woman spat, her eyes flashing toward Akua. "With Eha." Akua felt the ground shift beneath her feet. The whispers, the strange phone call, the soft hands, suddenly, everything she thought she knew about Kwesi began to unravel. And she realized, with a sinking heart, that she had been living with a man she didn't truly know at all. The black Prado didn't move for nearly 10 minutes after the slap. A small crowd gathered, whispering like the wind through dry leaves. Kwesi's jaw tightened, his cheek red from the woman's strike, but he didn't retaliate. "Akua, please, go inside," Kwesi said without looking at her. But Akua's feet wouldn't move. Her heart pounded, her mind spinning. "Who is she, Kwesi?" she asked, her voice low but sharp. The woman laughed, a short, mocking sound. "Who am I? I'm the wife of his brother. But before that, I was his woman." She let the words hang in the humid air like smoke. Gasps rippled through the bystanders. Kwesi's eyes flickered with something, shame, maybe, or anger. Afia, leave her out of this, Kwesi muttered. Leave her out. You've been hiding here, living like a beggar, while your name is dragged through the mud in the papers. And now I see why you're keeping her as your, what? Comfort. Afia's gaze raked over Akua, the disdain in her voice sharp as glass. Akua felt heat rush to her face, not from shame, but from a rising fury. If you came here to insult me, you've wasted your time, she said, stepping closer. Take your insults and go. Afia's smirk deepened, but she finally turned back to her car. You deserve better lies than the ones he tells, she said over her shoulder, before slamming the door and driving off. When the street was quiet again, Akua turned to Kwesi. Talk, she demanded. And Kwesi did. He told her everything, how his real name was Kwesi Owusu, CEO of Owusu Properties, one of Ghana's most successful real estate firms. How months ago, he discovered that his own elder brother, Kwaku, was embezzling millions from the company. How he confronted him, only for Kwaku to retaliate with a fabricated scandal that made headlines alleging Kwesi had stolen from the company and had an affair with Afia, his brother's wife. I didn't touch her after she chose him, Kwesi said, his voice rough. But she helped him ruin me. They made me look guilty, froze my accounts, and I had to disappear before they could drag me into court without proof. I've been working quietly to gather evidence. Akua stared at him, her mind wrestling between sympathy and suspicion. So you came here to hide? Yes, he said, stepping closer. But then, I met you. His voice softened. And you and Kobe. Don't, Akua cut in, holding up a hand. Don't mix me into your mess. She turned away, her thoughts heavy, but that night, while cleaning, she heard him again. On the phone. I'll be ready to leave as soon as it's done, Kwesi said in a low tone. No, I can't take anyone with me. It's better she stays out of it. Akua froze in the shadows. He wasn't talking about Afia or his brother. He was talking about her. The days that followed felt strange, like the air in Madina had thickened. Kwesi still helped at the chop bar, still smiled at Kobe, but there was a distance in his eyes now, like he was already halfway gone. Akua tried to ignore the phone call she'd overheard, but the words kept replaying, it's better she stays out of it. Then one morning, the news broke. Kwaku Owusu, the celebrated businessman, was arrested by EOCO for fraud and embezzlement. Pictures of him being escorted into a police van filled every news site, and in the background of one photo, Afia's face was twisted with rage. By midday, the headlines had shifted. Kwesi Owusu's name cleared in major real estate scandal. Madina was buzzing. At the chop bar, customers kept asking Akua if she'd seen the news. She nodded politely, pretending it didn't matter, but inside, her stomach churned. That evening, Kwesi didn't come back. Not the next day either. On the third day, Akua tried to tell herself it didn't matter. She chopped onions until her eyes stung more than usual, served food until her arms ached, and forced herself to laugh at Kobe's jokes. Then, on Saturday morning, a black SUV pulled up in front of the shop. It wasn't the same Prado, it was sleeker, newer, with a liveried chauffeur in a crisp white shirt. He stepped out, holding a thick black envelope. Madam Akua? Yes, she said slowly, wiping her hands on her apron. This is for you. He handed her the envelope and left without another word. Inside was a set of documents and a letter. The documents were the title deed to a modest but beautiful 3-bedroom house in Tima, fully paid for. The letter was in Kwesi's handwriting. Akua, you showed me kindness when I was nothing. I will never forget that. But my life is no longer safe for you or Kobe. There are people who will always try to hurt me, and I cannot drag you into that world. This house is yours. Raise Kobe well. And when you think of me, remember the man you met in the rain, not the one the world tries to destroy. Kwesi. Akua read the letter 3 times before folding it. Kobe came up beside her. Is Uncle Kwesi coming back? He asked. She knelt down and hugged him tightly. No, Kobe. But we'll be okay. That night, after closing the shop, Akua sat alone on the bench outside. The street was quiet except for the distant hum of trotro engines. She thought about how easy it had been to open her door to a stranger, and how hard it had been to let him go. People in Madina still whispered about the scandal, about the millionaire who hid in her shop. But Akua didn't care anymore. She understood something now, that kindness is not an investment expecting a return. It's a seed you plant, not knowing if you'll ever see it grow. And sometimes, the only reward is knowing you planted it at all.